How have you been? Welcome to Das Dad Advice. Tonight we're choosing a minivan. I know, that's what it is, but yeah, you're a dad, so you probably understand. If you're shopping for a minivan, you're probably already convinced that the SUV is not for you. But I still need to explain why, because I try to have this rational purchasing experience. So anyways, let's look at this. You're probably wondering why a minivan? Why not get one of those huge ass, SUVs with 7 passengers? Well, I often argue with my friends. Some of them have gone the 7 or even 8 passenger SUV route. I'm a minivan guy. I trust in minivans. Anyways, I prefer minivans because those big SUVs are terrible when getting into them. They have like these huge doors. Good luck going in the back seat to go and tie up a kid. Like, tie a safety belt. They're just not good at hauling people, whereas a minivan, well, that's what it's meant to do, right? They're super comfortable. Often they have like these very cushiony suspensions. Like, dude, this is not a race car. Your SUV is not a race car. Okay, if you're hauling people, you need something that's safe and comfortable. I used to call my car I used to call it my living room. I'd wake up in the morning, eat breakfast, and have a coffee. And if I couldn't have the same coffee in the same cup in my minivan or my car, then in my kitchen, it was an issue. Like I had to bring my cup in my van, and that was it. So anyways, like I love minivans because they're super comfortable. They're also cheaper. Like if you take your minivan and you compare it to the SUV from the same brand, the SUV is going to be more expensive. Sometimes it's just a few $1,000s, but it's the principle, right? I have to go back to the purchase price. Sorry. There's also maintenance. Minivan tires are often smaller sizes. This is just an example. You often end up with 17 inches. The comparable SUV that seats 7 will most certainly have 18, 19-inch wheels. That's a $25 per tire price difference every time you change tires. So if you take that into your 10 years, imagine buying 3 sets of wheels or 2 sets of wheels in your 10 years, let's say, to be a little bit more conservative. That means $200 for new summer tires and $200 for winter tires extra. That's $400 over 10 years. It's not a lot, but it's significant. Also, minivans consume less gas. They're lighter. They're more, the aerodynamics are better on a minivan. I don't know why. They often have the same engines. They're just cheaper on gas. They also cost a lot less in insurance. I compared all of the minivans I have with their counterparts. So let's say like the Honda and the Pilot, and then the Kia Carnival and the Telluride, and then what's the other ones? The Toyota, and the Highlander, and the Sienna. And the Pacifica, and What's a Pacifica's SUV? Durango. There you go. So anyways, I compared all of these, and it's a lot cheaper to buy a minivan. Finally, you have a lot more cargo space in all of them. It just is. Like, the cargo space, like the way that the 7-seaters get people, like get 7 passengers, is because they use up all the cargo space. Minivans have like this dip in the back where you can put a lot of stuff in, plus the same space as the other one, the SUVs, so you end up with more room. Plus, more often than not, seats can get removed and so on. Like, there's just more room in a minivan. So that's why I prefer minivans to SUVs. And that's why this time as well, I will not buy an SUV. I will buy a new minivan again. Okay, so before you start, you need to select, well, to look at the market, see what's there. I'll always use the same design, which means top left, Honda Odyssey. It's a legend. It's been the best minivan year after year for the past, I don't know, 5-6 years. Like, that thing rocks. Then there's a Chrysler Pacifica. I'm in Canada. Chrysler didn't sell as well. It used to be Dodge Grand Caravans. The Pacifica has been here for a few years now. I was looking at the hybrid model. So that's top right. Bottom left, Toyota Sienna. It's been around for a very long time. It had a few rough years, say in the past, well, let's say from 2021. And that series, like, go back a few years, it didn't score so well on most things. It was even horrible on the crash tests for a while. But it's there, so you need to look at it. Then there's a new player in town, the Kia Carnival. Kia used to have the Sedona. The Sedona got replaced by the Carnival last year for a 2021 model, I believe. And they had both on that year, which makes it confusing because when you look at things, the Carnival is often not listed. Like, you get the older Carnival from the early 2000s. As I said, I'm in Canada, so all the prices, everything will be in Canadian dollars, and the options are Canadian options. So anyways, then you need to look at your options. Like, what you need to set what you want to select the trim and options you'll want. So, do you want front-wheel drives or all-wheel drive? Do you want an infotainment system in the back, like that's a screen with the DVD or Blu-ray player for kids in the back? I must admit that all of my cars, all of my minivans, up until this one we're purchasing, I always had it because it was always part of the trim. Or at least the trim was not too expensive that it prevented us from going that way. For the all-wheel drive, I don't care for all-wheel drive. I want front-wheel drive. What I'll be looking for though is if I take the front-wheel drive, the front-wheel brakes need to be double piston. I've often seen some vans with single pistons up front. I'm hesitant when it comes to that. Cargo volume. Sorry. This is the first van I'm buying where cargo volume is not so much of an issue. I plan on putting a hitch and buying a trailer to move the renovation materials. Before this one, my minimum was that I needed to be able to fit a 4x8 plywood on the floor and shut the gate in the back. The Grand Caravan was pretty much the only one who could do it because of the stow and go. Now, this is the first time I'm looking at a model that where cargo space is just for luggage. So it doesn't count so much in my equation. Then there's price. Like, these little monsters are crazy expensive, especially now that the Grand Caravan's not around anymore. Well, it makes a comeback this year. It'll cost somewhere in the mid 30,000s, like $35,000. But I don't want one anymore. So I want to move away from the Dodge Grand Caravan. So I'm not even considering it. But the four models I'm looking at all have prices that can go anywhere between $40,000 and $70,000-$80,000. So you need to set your price point. Then you need to look at your comfort options. So to me, the baseline was heated seats, and if I could get the heated wheel also, but it wasn't a must. The other thing I was looking for was 18-inch wheels as much as possible, not bigger. And if it had the infotainment, fine. If not, too bad. So once I looked at this, I came up with trims for each brand that represented what I was looking for. So that way it helps me compare different models. Once you've set your trim, then the fun starts. It's what I call choosing your problems. So the last time I bought a minivan was a Grand Caravan. When I was looking at Car Complaints, which is a website that tallies or keep track of the issues and recalls and so on, the Grand Caravan issues were brake problems, like overused brakes and warped rotors. This is a simple fix for me. It's not complicated to change rotors and brakes. So the first thing I did is I bought the van, took the old pads off, took the old rotors, set premium stuff on there, and I never had an issue. You need to know what the problems with the van you're buying, what they will be. So if I look at the Honda Odyssey, it already has a few problems for the newer model with interior accessory, which is something that comes often with the Honda Odyssey. And then steering problem, what the hell? So anyways, that's one thing. I looked at the Chrysler Pacifica, the latest model, the latest hybrid model was a 2020, and it still had no issues. So that's one thing. Then both the Toyota and the Kia are not yet listed because the new Sienna are all hybrid. I couldn't go back a few years for the Sienna because they weren't the hybrid model, so it's not reliable in that way. As for the Kia, it's the same thing. The Carnival is new. If I wanted to go back a few years, I would have gone with the Sedona, which was a whole different car. So for these four new models, it's hard to see what the issues will be. So anyways, that's it. So I know what my trims are. I know what the issues might be. Well, I know there are no issues. Now, what you need to look for is the security aspect. I mean, you're buying a minivan. You want a secure thing. Now, luckily in this case, all green except for stupid headlights. All green. The Pacifica tests aren't completed, so we don't have the rest, but it's all green. All green for the Sienna. Like really all green all over the place. And then the Carnival has two issues. There's a red for headlights and a according to the IIHS, which is where we got this from, the headlights weren't not lighting enough, like they weren't strong enough. To be honest, that works with me because I hate stupid Kia headlights. Like, a friend owns a Sedona late model, like the premium, that has the very big headlights. I've darkened, just to say, I've darkened the Carnival's headlight to the left. It was green, but that's because it's for a trim that I'm not looking at. The trim I am looking at is the one with the red P. So anyways, whenever we're driving with his Sedona, people keep giving us beam light warnings as if our headlights were like beamed, but they're not. To me, that's a big issue. Like, I don't want to be the one blinding everyone with stupid lights that are way too bright. So, anyways, see this. But generally speaking, all four of these models have impeccable security, so I can feel confident buying any of these. Now, it's worth noticing that the Sienna's all green. The 2020 Sienna was a train wreck, had a bunch of yellows and reds, so they've really fixed the problem. So that's what, earlier when we were looking at the track records, that's why I didn't go back more with the Sienna. Like, had it been the same security issues than the previous models, I probably would have used some of the track record. But now they seem to have changed the whole thing since 2021. So I'm not going back with that, right? You get it, I hope. So it's the same thing for the Carnival. It doesn't have all the Sedona issues, except for the lights. So, well, that's it. I'm not going back. I'm not giving it the problems of the other one. Well, now that we know this, what about price? Well, when you're shopping for a car, you need to consider what's called the cost of ownership, the total cost. So what that represents is, well, you need to look at your car over a certain period of time. In my case, a new car, I look at it over 10 years, right? That's my goal, is to keep it for 10 years. All of these can all last 10 years. I've also compared them to used cars. The used models that I use are 3 years old. Those are return rentals. They're generally in very good shape. I would feel confident buying a 3-year-old car, especially today. They last long. So what I'm doing is I'm taking new cars over 7 years and used 3-year-old cars over 7 years as well. What will it cost me for the next 7 years? Then, if I had bought a used car, I would replace it in 7 years, whereas the new car would keep for the next 3 and then replace. So, I'm only looking at the first 7 years of ownership. You need to look at the total cost of the car that you'll be paying, like including the financing. So it's the price plus financing. So overall, over 7 years, how much am I paying? Then you look at how much insurances cost for 7 years. So to do this, I had quotes done with Industrial Alliance, which is a fairly well-known insurer here in Quebec, and they have decent pricing. I did this for all the new cars and also all the 3-year-old, which is 2018 models. Then I looked at the gas for 7 years based on the average combined for the new cars and the old cars. Used, I mean. And then finally the maintenance from Edmunds.com. Maintenance and repairs over it's 5 years, but I've adjusted it for 7 years. So this is the price. So when you look at these prices, it'll be how much the car has cost, the total amount of payments that I've made on it, 7 years of insurance, 7 years of gas, plus repairs and maintenance, including warranty, right? So let's look at this. The first column is the Odyssey. The trim I was looking at is the EX-RES. Second column is the Pacifica Hybrid Touring L+. The third is Sienna Hybrid XLE front wheel drive. And finally the Carnival LX Plus. These are all similar trims, but the prices vary. The first line is the new, after 7 years. Second line is used, so a 2018 model after 7 years. If you look at this, you'll notice a trend. A used Honda Odyssey is 70,000. A new Pacifica, 70,000. A new Sienna, 70,000. And a Carnival, 71,000. Like, those are pretty much, they're all within $1,000, which is insignificant, especially if we're talking about a $70,000 car overall. So that means that owning this car will cost me approximately close to a little bit more, a little over, $10,000 per year, which makes it a little under $1,000 a month. That's including payment, insurances, gas, and maintenance, averaged out over 7 years. It's expensive, but it's reassuring to see that the $70,000 is pretty much a bottom line, for what I'm looking for at least. What's also surprising is the used models come out more expensive in 2 of the cases. Now notice that the hybrid models, for the Pacifica, it's hybrid against hybrid. But for the Sienna, it's hybrid versus gas. So that's why it's such a big difference. And as for the Carnival, it's Carnival versus Sedona. And the Sedona was much cheaper, but also it depreciated a lot faster than the Carnival. We don't know for the Carnival yet, but that thing, as soon as you bought it, was worth half of its price. Like, it dropped very quickly in terms of value. So anyways, if we're looking at this, I'm really tempted to go with the Sienna Hybrid. It's a little bit more expensive, but I trust Toyota more than Chrysler and more than Kia. But that's me. You can come up with different ideas. It's just that, based on my past experience and the people surrounding me, I've owned Kias. They aged very poorly. The friends that I have around me that own Kias have major issues with the wheels and bearings and so on, and they're often at the dealership. And I was looking at the Telluride, which is the same engine as the Carnival, and it's pretty much the same build. It already has some issues that are recurring with Kia. So, I don't trust it very much. The reason why I would move away from Honda in this case is because they don't have the hybrid. So it's a gas guzzling car. But what I really love about it is that it's very cheap to maintain. In terms of maintenance, it's the one that had the lowest maintenance costs over time. So if they come out with a hybrid model next year, for example, they would, and the price is still the same, they would become much more competitive. Then there's Chrysler. I've owned Dodge Grand Caravans. Like I've had 2 in a row. They don't age well. Like I've never had big major issues with my van. Like the thing's a tank. Currently it's 8 years old and it's still going. It has 240,000 kilometers on it. I don't really have issues. I change the oil every 12, 15,000 kilometers. Like whenever it tells me to change it. I mean, the thing has been good to me. But it was also a $25,000 car. It wasn't a 50 something thousand dollar car. Right? It was half the price of that. So I was fine with having a few repairs because it was still cheaper. But I don't necessarily trust Chrysler all that much. So I don't know. But anyways, it's still to consider. I probably won't be buying this year simply because my van's still good and I'd like to tough it out for 10 years, which would bring me in 2023. And by then, Honda's supposed to have a hybrid model. At least the rumor has it that it will have a hybrid. Then we will also have a track record for the Sienna hybrid and a Carnival, which will make taking a decision much easier. So anyways, I wanted to let you with this and a few final thoughts. The first one is if you're buying a new new minivan, consider your budget and don't necessarily go for initial cheaper price, because as you can see, even though the initial price was more expensive, let's say on the Sienna than it was on the Carnival, for example, over 7 years, the Sienna gets cheaper, like over the long run. We've also noticed that, I mean, they're all $70,000 cars over 7 years. There's not much differentiate the models other than that. I mean, they're all pretty similar. So the only way to really get a good feel is to go and test them. Like, take the time. Plus, when you'll visit dealerships, they might sweeten the pot a little bit, give you a good deal on something. So consider going for a test drive. Then you need to look at things objectively. There's objectivity, and then there's subjectivity. You need to take into account the rational aspects of buying a $70,000 car, right? Your decision needs to be made up front with sensible arguments, but you also need to consider what you like and what you do not like. So for example, if everything pointed towards the Carnival when you made your own evaluation and assessment, but you find the damn thing horrible to look at and you'd never see yourself driving that, well then what's the point? Like, I mean, even though it hits all the marks, if you find it ugly, don't want to drive it, why consider it? Limit your choices to what you will really buy and then take your decision objectively. Finally, and as always, it's always the right product at the right price at the right time. Currently, the chip supply issues is really problematic. Stepping into a Toyota dealer, they'll tell you they don't have anything. Go to Honda, much the same thing, or you'll be on a waiting list forever. Like, you need to, you need to consider this. So you go for a test drive, and at the same time, you realize, when will I be getting this car? How long will it take? Like, can I get one for the price I want to pay? That's it. I thank you for staying with me. I know it's a long video, but it's not every day that you buy something worth $70,000. I mean, other than your house. And how long have you taken before buying your house? Um, anyways, if you want to listen to this in French, it's available. If you, yeah, that's it. It's late. I'm getting